Hello everyone, welcome back to League of Legends DFS Esports Breakdown for July the 15th. We have a pretty interesting 4-gamer here. I think there's a few spots worth talking about. So we'll go ahead and just quickly get into the recap as usual, and then we can go ahead and get started. The first series up yesterday was the Anyone's Legend versus TT Gaming series. AL ended up taking it in 3, and this is oddly enough kind of exactly what we anticipated. As we alluded to yesterday, we're going to talk about it a little bit more extensively here today. I've learned a lot more about it since then. But we saw, but we learned and we saw and we put it into practice here with the blue side and how dominant it is and all that stuff we talked about yesterday. It happened again today, so we didn't know at the time, but I did end up trying to update people. But we did find out AL was the blue side team here. And then AL won their blue side, TT won blue side, AL ended up bringing it back, winning the third game on blue side as well. So I think I remember specifically talking about betting a 2-1 for whoever has blue side. I did say AL was getting blue side in the description and the updated description, and I tried to tweet it out as well. So if you guys were, following that and tailing that like I did, then we probably had a pretty good night. And the AL ended up scoring pretty well on DK as well. So pretty pleased with that. V5 ended up getting the pretty clean 2-0 over, actually not that clean, but they ended up getting the 2-0 over IG. Game 1 was actually pretty close to being bad for them. Shun was actually extremely fed on this diddly, and they were very close to being able to probably beat V5. They just they made a very, very bad mistake and pushed way too far into a bottom lane play where Shun ended up giving a 1,000 gold bounty to Photic, which kind of snowballed and leaving a few of his teammates dying as well. So they ended up tossing quite a bit of a gold lead that they had right back to V5. Then V5 were able to kind of keep going and run it down and win the game. After that comeback that they were handed. But game 2 was extremely clinical, very, very clean from V5. Rich didn't have a good game 1, but it's sometimes just how top lane goes. But yeah, I mean, game 1 was pretty dicey. Game 2, they were pretty clean. It's hard to put too much stock into it, into game 1 being like a dicey win for V5. Like, yeah, the better team won, but, they didn't look clean. But, I mean, they're allowed to make mistakes. I don't want to go too hard or too away from V5 just because of how poorly they maybe looked yesterday just in the first half of game 1. Over in the LCK, DRX, KT, we didn't talk much extensively about these games. I found it very hard to find a reasoning why an underdog would win here. It ended up being pretty odd. Red side actually ended up taking 2 of these 3 games. As we could tell, like the team when we're looking at least on the scoreboards here, the team on the right is red and team on the left is blue, as they would be in draft. So Team Red ended up actually taking game 1 and 3 with KT and DRX. I don't know what it is, but we talked about it yesterday as well. But in the LPL specifically, blue side is extremely dominant. We look at some of these points, but like JD Gaming is 12-1. 11-3, 10-4, 10-3, 10-0, 9-4, 8-3, 8-3, 8-2. FPX not great, 6-7, but TT 6-1. LGD, Rare Atom 5-4, Weibo 5-7, IG Ultra Prime, WE. Blue side, not the best for them. If we were to update this to look at the last patch and then the current patch we're playing on, so the last little bit that it's been even more pronounced. 3 teams on 7-1. We have a 7-2, 7-0, 6-2, 6-2, 6-1, 6-0, 5-3, 5-2, 5-4, 4-2, 3-3, 3-2, 2-2, 1-3. Ultra Prime is the only team with a losing record on blue side. And that is insanely impressive when you have 17 teams. When you have 17 teams playing on 2 different sides of the map, and one of them is 16-1, like in terms of how strongly dominant it is. It's just an insane outlier. Like that's just an insane stat to think about. Um, Again, it's a little bit less pronounced in the LCK. Like Gen G, T1, Damwon, yeah, like they're just much better teams. But Hanwha 5-7, KT 4-3, Kwangdong 4-3, LSB 4-3, DRX Nongshim 2-4, Fred Ebrion 1-7. So it's not nearly as pronounced over in the LCK, but in the LPL specifically, that is incredibly like insane to look at. Going back to the games, DRX ended up losing the series to KT. This was a little bit of a surprise. Obviously, I liked DRX. I didn't love them that much or was on them on DraftKings. I did look at Kingin specifically as a one-off top lane pivot. He did end up hurting my lineup that I had DRX in, obviously, but I don't know. It was a weird one. I don't know why, but they just continue to draft really poorly around Deft. They use him in such a supportive fashion. It's very, very odd. Game 3, they definitely could have played much better and taken it home. I don't think the KT draft was that great. I like DRX's standard scaling team fight comp here. They just fell way too far behind and misplayed it heavily. Yeah, I don't know. The LCK just feels so random at the moment. I don't love what's happening there at all. It's really hard to get a grasp on some of the things that happen there sometimes. It feels like it feels very top heavy until it randomly doesn't. I don't know. The second series was Damwon getting a quick 2-0 over Kwangdong. Nothing too crazy to really note here. This was just the much better team winning by a good margin. Damwon had some interesting pick decisions here. I guess maybe just the Zillion in game 2. The rest was really standard. But overall, pretty decent stuff. Obviously still from them. I still think they're one of the 3 elite teams that we have in the league, and they showed it here. DRX definitely faltered. I think KT have been looking a little bit better lately, but that was still a surprise. We can move on to looking at go ahead and look at the odds that we do have out for these games. I want to start by looking at the odds before we look into anything specific. I want to get a general slate overview before we talk about the games. That way we have an idea of what we're kind of talking and looking at. So right off the bat, we have 4 pretty sizable favorites. The closest game odds-wise is RNG minus 285, LNG plus 210. Off the bat, I actually find a few of these spots pretty intriguing. The past few days or so, maybe the past week, there hasn't been too many intriguing underdog spots, in my opinion. There's been a few here and there. Some of them came through, some of them not. It is what it is. But a few of these spots, I think there's like 3 or maybe 3. I think there's legitimately 3 spots here where I could be on the fence enough to look at the underdog and probably go that way. Obviously not going to go too crazy on all of them, but right off the bat, the only one that I don't have much faith in is Live Sandbox Hanwha Life. I feel like LSB have been pretty clean and Hanwha have been pretty bad lately. Granted, LSB are a relatively middling team and Hanwha are like a bad team. So that doesn't set up the best in terms of like Live Sandbox being a clean 2-0 candidate. However, I do think that they, they're probably going to be pretty overlooked, especially when we look at somebody like Prince. He's such an insane player that he's definitely like such an insane player, like stat wise and just kind of eye test wise, that I think you could definitely make a pretty good case to get a lot of Prince into your lineups. As hopefully, I mean, he's not insanely cheap, so people aren't going to get a ton of him in. I just feel like a lot of these things add up to where Prince could have a pretty good day. Maybe he's a good secondary stack option. Just an interesting way to get unique with it. And that leaves with the other 3 series, both of the LPL games and the LCK game of Fred Ebrion Nongshim. I have a pretty intriguing case for, I think, or just in the top, off the top of my head, in my mind. I could see it going that way for sure. So we'll talk about why here as well. The note for, as we talked about, and we're starting to stress a lot here, is blue side. Blue side is mattering a ton. Obviously, we just went over the stats and how insanely one-sided it is. A tip from I got from Chris Emmerich DFS. He hosts the podcast The Shark Cove. You guys should definitely worth checking it out. He has some rotating guests on there. Very sharp people. They give out a lot of great info, and they look at bets and DFS as well, similar to how I do. They just do it as like a little bit more professional, a little bit more stat based, just probably a little bit different, probably better version than what I do. So definitely worth checking them out. They've been talking about this for a little bit, and I'm just starting to catch on. The difference, or the easy way to get a blue side, or to look at who has blue side, is actually just right here on the DK Create lineup page. So the team that starts on blue side will be the top team here. For the past few days, I've went back and checked this out. This is how the blue side works. It's just whoever is the top team here. It starts on blue side. And it alternates in some cases. So in the LPL, the way it works is it just flat alternates. Game 1 and 3, RNG and WE will have blue sides. Game 2, JDG and LNG will have blue side. In the LCK, it's game 1 will start with the top teams. So Live Sandbox and Freddy Brianna in this case, and then it's whoever loses picks the side. So it could be, double blue side, but they end up just get swept either way. But that's how it works. So that's something to keep in mind. Specifically, I think, again, in the LPL, we just saw the numbers. They were absolutely insane. So that's another thing to keep in mind here. And that's going to be the topic of especially this first game, Team WE JDG. I don't want this to come out or look like I'm just doing this because the blue side, or I'm just doing this because that. Like, I don't want to make it look like, oh, he just found out this new blue side thing, he wants to use it all the time. That's not really what's happening here. When I first saw these odds, I thought they were crazy. This is absolutely insane. I mean, yeah, JDG's probably like a top 4, top 5 team. Yeah, WE's been the worst team in the league, probably by a good bit. I get the price, but JDG does not look clean, and we know how random esports and LPL and League of Legends, like, we know how random this stuff can be. So specifically, if we look blue side, Team WE's actually gotten a decent score here on blue side. They're 2-2 on blue. Obviously not great, but for a team that has how many wins? 2 or 4? So they're 4-14 overall. But lately they're here. We'll filter this out to look at just these the teams that we're talking about here today. So JDG, Royal Never Give Up, LNG. So if we look blue side here, all are pretty good, obviously. Team WE 2-2, not the best, but again, we're talking about a team that's 4-14, so 2-2 is not that bad. JDG 7-1, obviously very strong. RNG 6-1, very strong for them as well. If we look over at the red side, it's obviously a much different story. Team WE is a very, very bad team on the red side, 1-8. But JDG is also not good as well. LNG 1-6 on red. Like, the numbers here are so insanely pronounced that you can definitely make a very solid case that WE can make this series close and maybe even win that third game, because that those numbers are so pronounced. Like, yeah, if we were to look at the overall if we were to look at the overarching theme here, or the overarching stats, and say we have JDG Gaming, they're 8-1 series, 17-8 in the map picks, or 17-8 in the maps, 68% win rate, very, very decent, very good, third in the league. Then we have Team WE, who's 4-14, 22% map win rate, 7 loss streak, 0-7 in the league, bottom of the league. It definitely looks extremely one-sided. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I just think if we break it down a little bit, look at how pronounced and how different this side selection has been for them. It changes the whole game. I think it really does. It really can. Obviously, we're talking about this in the context of JD Gaming being a minus 1600 favorite. Obviously, I don't think just because the sides are that pronounced that makes WE like a better or like a that much better. Like the team is still really bad. There's no changing that. The sides will just help up the variance and up the randomness in what could be a very interesting spot. And that's all I'm saying. That's like the only kind of point where I'm trying to get to here. So we know WE is going to be blue side 2 times this series if it goes 3. There'll be blue side games 1 and 3. JD Gaming will be red side game 1 and 3. They're 2 and 4 on red side. They are 7 and 1 on blue side. So they are pretty much one of the best teams in the league when they're on blue side. Then on red side, they're like, they're average. I think when you look at the context of, it's not a lot of sample for sure. I can definitely give you that. When we look at the context of that, we have Team WE who's 2 and 2, not the best, that's pretty decent for them. Again, within the context of who these teams are, when I'm saying these things, we have to remember who these teams are. WE, worst team in the league. JD Gaming, top 3 team. But when I say WE is not that bad here, it's because they're 2 and 2 on blue. They're 2 and 2 on blue side, and they're 1 and 8 on red side. That's wildly different. It's wildly different. Same with JD Gaming. On blue side, they're 7 and 1, incredibly indomitable. On red side, 2 and 4, very beatable, very beatable. We've seen JD Gaming drop multiple games this split, and it's because of that reason. They drop these games on blue side and they on red side, and they just are insanely dominant on blue side or on blue side. They are dominant on blue. They drop these games on red side, and that could definitely be the case here. And this is the case where we have WE, who's plus 725, by the way. They have blue side game 1 and 3, and we know how random the games can be. I just feel like when you add up all of these kind of small factors, it just kind of tells me that this could be an interesting series, and it's definitely one where we could look back tomorrow and have it as a very different idea of what like if we were to wake up tomorrow and see WE won this series 2-1, would we be shocked? Maybe. Probably. Like when we look at the context of where these two teams are in the league, yeah, you'd probably be pretty shocked. However, I feel like just with how random it is, like some of these things just kind of happen sometimes. I feel like feels like it's maybe been a little bit since we've had one of these crazy big underdog wins. I don't know. It just feels like it's definitely very possible here. I don't love the lineup WE are rolling out. Biu, Beishong, and Shanks, specifically Biu and Beishong, I think are pretty good. 369 has been playing pretty well. Same with Kanavi. Those are 2 very strong players in their positions. Shanks versus Yagao, obviously a slight lean towards Yagao. However, I don't think either of them are particularly good, so that could be like kind of a wash. Bottom lane is definitely very much in favor of JDG as well. Hope and Missing are obviously much better than Xing and Kadaya. However, I do think Xing and Kadaya played together in the WE Academy for a while. So I think this is actually a bottom lane that has synergy. Let's see. LPL Spring. Were they playing together here? Yeah. Well, that was Stay and Kadaya. Oh, I'm looking at Xie's. Whoops. I need to look at Xing. Whoops. So Xing match history, LPL Spring. Let's look at a couple of these games. I believe Xing and Kadaya are the bottom lane duo. Yeah, Xing and Kadaya. I mean, they beat IG here. Biu, Beishong, Xie, Xing, and Kadaya. Like, I feel like this is low-key, like, not that bad of a team as well. LDL Spring Playoffs here. This is where I wanted to see. I think this is the Xing and Kadaya team, right? No, it's Xing and Qi, Xiao Kao Bao, Hangin, King Tian, Shalohu, Care, Shenyi. Interesting Fun Plus team there. The point is, I feel like the Xing Kadaya bot lane has not been that bad. Like, again, in the context of minus 1600, JDG is going to be like 50 something percent owned or something. Like, it's pretty insane. I'm going to take the shot there with WE. I'm going to go pretty light with it. However, I think I'm going to take my stand there and fade JDG either way. Lately, I've been pretty intrigued with just trying to get 3 lineups together and focus on the 3 entry max stuff and a little bit more single entry. I need to cut down the amount of lineups I play. That's definitely been a problem for me. So I'm definitely going to have one WE lineup, and I'm probably going to have no JDG exposure. I just think that if JDG need to come from behind and win like a game 1 or a game 3, and if like WE steal a game, their upside is obviously extremely limited in that aspect. So it's not one there. A little bit of a different format, so I apologize for the how it looks, but it's just a lot faster for me to do it this way, to run and crunch these numbers through a spreadsheet and then just take a picture of it. It's expected to be the bloodiest game on the slate. I think that's a fair assessment. We know how both of these teams play. WE probably are going to be sub 10% owned because of that big minus 1600 price, and I think that's fine. The next one up, LNG RNG. Sorry, I need to speed run this a little bit. I have something to attend to. As much as I would love to make a case for LNG here, they're subbing out their top end support. They just have not been looking good. I know I've not been the biggest proponent of RNG as well. I think you could definitely make a case either way. However, I think RNG are just still the better team. I'm still just very heavily on fade team LNG. And then again as well, we could talk about blue side RNG or 6-1 blue side. LNG or 1-6 red side. So game 1 very much looking pretty heavy in favor of RNG. LNG on blue are only 5-3. On red side, RNG are 2-5. So it is pretty bad. Maybe game 2 could go in favor of LNG. However, I think if we were to look at game 3, RNG again would be back on that blue side where they're 6-1, and LNG would be 1-6 in that game 3 if that were to be if that were to go to the distance. So for that reason, I'm going with RNG as well. Again, I would love to get as much RNG players in as I can. I think this is a really good spot for them. I think LNG bring in Iwandi and Panda C. I think they might be trying to get a little bit more aggressive and try to up the tempo in the game a little bit. I think that's specifically something that Lumao will help with. So for that reason, I'm going with RNG. I like RNG a good bit here. They're going to be a team I definitely look to try to team up with WE as well. So I think that's going to be a pretty solid base starting build for me is RNG, WE, and go from there. Again, if we look at the numbers, both of these series are expected to be over 25 combined kills per game. Or if you guys are new or don't know what these top numbers are, I'll quickly go through them. So this first one, CKPM, this is combined kills per map. This is just, combined kills per minute. So this is just how many kills from either team there would be in a minute. Obviously, JDG, WE, RNG are all pretty high, about 4/5 of a kill per minute. The average game time, obviously that's just how long their games go on average. So we just take a pretty simple formula and average out the team's combined kills per minute and then average out their average game time, and that gives us an average of combined kills per game. And this could give us just it's not a perfect stat by any means, but it can give us a neat little baseline of about how many kills we're probably expecting per game. And obviously it's very heavily LPL favored. The LCK has just been incredibly slow lately. So I'm pretty focused over here on the LPL for that reason. However, I do think there is some upsides over in the LCK, so we can quickly talk about them before I get out of here. So One of the spots, or one of the more interesting spots that I was alluding to earlier, was Fredit Brion versus Nongshim. As somebody who is a pretty, as somebody who is a pretty big proponent of Nongshim, they just are so up and down and so random. It's very hard to try and pinpoint where they are and try to justify kind of what they do when their late games are so incredibly poor. On the flip side, obviously Fredit Brion are the worst team in the league. They are one map out of 17. They have a 6% win rate. I do think that is a tad bit harsh on them. I mean, they obviously play a lot of all the great teams. Like, they took one off of Hanwha. They got swept by KT. Like, they are the worst team in the league. I just think Nongshim and their ability to not close games and find a way to lose games is definitely within the realm of possibilities here. Am I going to lock and load or look into this series a little bit more? Probably. I do think this is a pretty interesting spot, all things considered. Specifically, like, especially if we look at something like just like all their ratings here. Like, Fredit Brion's early game is incredibly tragic. It's insane. They're negative 1100 goal difference at 15. Sorry, this is just blue. I need to change that. Yeah. So if we look at just this, it's not good. All four of these teams are technically bad in this area. But I mean, it's not like Nongshim is particularly great at that either. And I think the big difference here is mid-late. Both of these teams, Nongshim and Fredit Brion, their mid-late is pretty bad. I think that's bottom 2 in the league, although there's a big gap up to Fredit Brion. It's very hard to make a numbers case or an anything case on Fredit Brion just with how bad they've been. I just think with Nongshim's ability to lose games, to find a way to snatch defeat in the jaws of victory, and we know Fredit Brion's like a relatively stable LCK staple team of playing slow, try and do something. Fredit Brion could take advantage of Nongshim's inability to do anything, and that's for that reason. I think this game low-key could be a little bit of an LCK fiesta. It probably doesn't happen twice, so the upside is not extremely high. However, I think this Bro Nongshim series is like a little bit low-key decent for that reason. Both of these teams have an extremely high average game time, the two highest on the slate at 33.9 minutes and 35.3 minutes. The average combined kills per minute is obviously pretty low. So, that's kind of where the average is coming out at. But it's an average of over 34, nearly 35 minutes of average game time. I think both of these teams are bad. We could definitely see something where it's very hard for Nongshim to like do something. I could definitely see a lot of late game team fights. Like, I could definitely see this one being like a 50-minute 17-17. They take a team fight at Elder Dragon and one of these teams walks away with it. I think in that case it's probably going to be Nongshim. However, again, I think it's pretty close, and it's going to be like I think this has LCK Fiesta potential, and for that reason I'm intrigued. Am I going to look to get some in? Maybe. I might look to make a Fredit Brion to go ahead and look and try and pair up with like an RNG. I think that makes sense. Like, especially if you want to try to do something like a Gala Captain. I think you could do worse than this spot for Fredit Brion. In terms of team slot, this is definitely one where I would want one of these sides. I think obviously the Nongshim team slot is probably the best option on the whole slate here. But I think, again, that's a spot where maybe you could argue Fredit Brion at 4.2. Like, I think you could do a lot worse than this spot for Fredit Brion for sure. And then, as we talked about earlier, Live Sandbox Hanwha, it's like that's a pretty low average. I mean, both these teams fight a little bit, so it could be okay. Again, I thought, when we look at LSB specifically, when we look at like somebody like Prince, his numbers are pretty insane. Same with like Kyle. I think Krako's numbers are good. Like, it's kind of not that great across the board except for Prince. So maybe that's a spot where you could try to get a unique style. Is try to get a Prince lineup specifically. Just one put or one offing Prince is definitely an idea. You know, there's ways you could approach this, and I don't think LSB are in that bad of a spot, but it's really hard to try to justify it over like the LPL stuff. And I think there's a pretty clear path to where Nongshim for Brion get out of hand as well. So I could see LSB Hanwha being like a relatively close, like LSB wins games 1 and 2 and like 17-10. Prince puts up like 90, everybody else puts up like 70, and it's like a decent baseline, probably pretty solid for cash, but I don't know. That's a tough spot. So we'll look at the players and get out of here as we typically do. Again, I'm trying to get out of here a little bit quick, so my apologies for kind of speed running this last bit, but I'm sure you guys can understand. And then RNG. So we'll look at the teams here. Again, we typically like to go look at the groupings. So pretty decent groupings overall for Fred Brion. That's another upside here. We see Delight, Henna, and Morgan up there. I can't imagine they're going to bring in their subs like Raptor or Gaiman. I'd imagine players like Delight, Henna, Lava are going to be relatively safe for substitutes, but I'm not sure. They do play first, so we will know before lock if you guys are up at that demon time. Overall, RNG pretty decent. We see Ming, Xiaohu, Gala, and Wei above 70. That's very, very good. W is a little across the board. Obviously, it's not going to be SMLZ. Beishong, Shanks, not going to be heal. It's going to be Shing and Kadaya. I mean, that's such a small sample. I wouldn't look into that too much. But yeah, that's the way it goes. LSB not the best. I mean, Kyle and Prince, maybe Croco. I mean, Dove for a top laner at 60 is not bad. So we'll go quickly position by position and then go ahead and get out of here. That way we can get a better idea. So top laners, probably you could make a pretty solid case for Morgan if you do believe in what I'm saying to go with that Fred Brion, or go with that, yeah, Fred Brion versus Nongshim option. I think he's extremely cheap. Yeah, 5.2. I don't know. Are they going to play Sword? I don't know. Keep an eye out for that. Did they play Sword the last time? Is that why he's like priced as the starter? Match history. Let's see. Fred Brion. So it was Sword, Lava, Game and Delight. I don't know. Keep an eye out for starters for Fred Brion. I think either way, you could look for them. Morgan, Lava, Henna, Delight. So I think if this is the full regular Fred Brion roster, it obviously inspires a little bit more. Morgan, Lava, Henna, Delight. So it looks like the last time out, or there was this one where it was Morgan, Raptor, Lava, Henna, Delight. Then obviously the last time out it was Sword, Lava, Henna, Delight. So keep an eye out for starters for that if you're playing that way. Sword, Lava, Game and Delight. I don't know. They have like a different player every time, so I don't know. Keep an eye out for that. But I like Morgan. I think a lot of these top laners are fine, but I would prefer Morgan, Dove, and Bew over somebody like Breathe. I think his numbers are kind of up and down. I would try to avoid Breathe, especially when you consider the upside of the other RNG players. For junglers, I think, again, Beishong, Wei, Croco, they're all fine. These are all very strong junglers. Yeah, I don't know if the build is possible, but I think a double jungle with Wei and Croco as two decently sized favorites is a pretty safe and solid build that you could look to. But I like getting these bad junglers of Fred Brion and WE's Beishong and in as well, so I like those guys. Sorry, my nose is extremely stuffy right now, so I'm trying to get out of here. Shanks, Xiaohu, Lava, decent numbers. Closers are hard to justify down there. Again, I like Shanks. I like WE here. Definitely will be having some of that. I like maybe a Lava build. I like Fred Brion's numbers, as well. I know Xiaohu's kill share has not been there, so it's not great, but I think they are pretty solid chance to win, and I do think again his participation is definitely worth getting in on. Looks like everyone but closer there. For AD carries, again, I like Prince a lot, Gala a lot, I like Henna a lot. These are all very good options. I mean, 80 carries, you can't really go wrong. I know Xing's numbers have not been great, but I mean, these are all losses, so it's really hard to tell what's going on when they're just kind of getting stomped every game, which might happen again. But we're not playing them for their for maybe they lose. We're playing them in hopes that they win. So all 80 carries fine. Support Delight, Ming, Kyle. Again, Kadaya's number is not great. Yeah, I mean Kadaya's numbers are just not great. But again, I think that's a spot where I might not go to Kadaya anyway because that if they lose, it could be a pretty bad number for Kadaya. They put a cricket number up on game 2. So maybe I will look to try and prioritize somebody like Ming or Kyle. But again, I'm not scared to go with somebody like Delight. He likes to play the Rakan, maybe get some solid numbers there. I think you get Fred Brion at like a sub 10% here, maybe a Team WE at a sub 10% as well. I think this is a pretty interesting slate for taking those underdog shots. Again, I don't know if they will come through. Probably not. We're taking pretty big shots here, but I mean, you might as well just take shots when you have, I think, reasons for it, and it makes sense. So, Fred Brion, Team WE, Live Sandbox, RNG, all starting blue side. You like to see it. I would have liked these spots either way. So, having that little extra oomph of the blue side definitely helps us. So, hopefully, blue side comes through for us. That will be it from me tonight. We get one little thing last. Look at map 1, Team WE. Yeah, map 1, Team WE, 375. That's not bad. That's not bad. So, possibilities there. So that'll be it from me tonight. I will see you guys all again tomorrow for the similar style video, and I should have Call of Duty out later tonight as well for tomorrow's slate. So that'll be it for me tonight. Best luck to you all tonight, and I will see you guys again tomorrow.